everybody doing?
Great.
Good. It's good to see faces that I know, people I feel like I know from Instagram.
Yeah,
Anyone want to jump in and go first?
I'll go. Yeah, so obviously we're all creatives, and the thing I really struggle with is knowing like how to organize my time. Usually I'm like a squirrel. I just tackle like the biggest pile of things. So I would love to know, how do you organize your week? You do a ton. I don't know how you do it, but I'd love to know like social media, website, shipping, painting, all the things. So what's your secrets?
Yeah, and I feel like this can go in a lot of directions, so I'll start big and then we can get into some nitty-gritty stuff. But I
Yeah.
think what I like to do first is have a loose calendar plan. So for me, I try to have a focus every month. And for some of you, it might look like every week or every quarter, but between all my different things I'm working on, I really like to say, you know what, this month I'm going to put more of my energy into the club, or I'm going to put more of my energy into a specific collection launch. And I think to put that in context for you, it might be like, Joe, it's June. June, I'm going to really focus on like my galleries or gallery
Right,
outreach. July, I'm going to really
right.
focus on XYZ. So that's like the starting point. And I find that helpful because then you can start to say, like, one, you have a list of priorities, just kind of like, I'm going to
Right,
put 80% of my stuff there.
right, right.
Then I like to think of week to week, what are my glass balls versus like my rubber balls? What do I absolutely have to do? So I have a
Mhm.
very short non-negotiable list. So I absolutely have to get it done. For me, and this is just what I tell myself, because like theoretically I don't have to do these things, but I like to.
I
I have
need
to get,
I need firm deadlines.
yeah. So every single week I tell myself I have to get a podcast out. I have to send a Substack out. That's like
Yeah,
my thing. For you, it might be like I want to get an email out once a month and I want to post at least twice on social media. Like, I
right,
don't,
right.
it doesn't really matter. But for me, having that baseline makes me feel like if I do those things, I'm progressing the business side of my business forward, and then
Yes.
everything else is extra. So I
Yeah,
don't have a super long non-negotiable list, but have your what's moving the needle the most. And honestly, for me, I've figured out that like the podcast is great for like retaining and like chatting with all of you basically. And then my email list is great because that's where the most like any across any of my businesses, like that's where the most sales and conversations and stuff happen. So those are my non-negotiables. I think
right.
for any of you, look at your analytics, and I would say probably all of you need to have one that is business related. Like I need to get an email out once a month. And then I would say like you need to have something that requires you to be in the studio, because I find most of the stuff we're thinking about, like, oh, I want to find my style, or I want to grow, or I want to, get a bigger following, is going to come by you painting. Like you're going to have more materials to market if you're painting more. You're going to be able to sell more if you're
Right,
painting more. So
right.
you want to definitely build that into your calendar too. I'm going to pause for a
Yeah.
second because I could go in like a million directions. Initial reactions from you or anyone else, like areas you want me to build on with time management. Do we feel good with
I
that?
love
Like, do you
I
have a
love how you
breakdown?
said non-negotiables and had like a really short list of non-negotiables. That's
Yeah.
super tangible to think about.
I
Yes.
think the non-negotiable list is really helpful for me too. And I think this will be helpful for you because, like, for example, the summer is a little bit slower for me, and maybe I want to take a week-long vacation, or I'm sure, all of you have like a crazy week where you can't get that much done. When you have a really short non-negotiable list, I can plan my two things, like the podcast and an email, a week in advance or a month in advance if I know I'm going to have like a week or two out of the office. Versus if you feel like I have to do 1,000 things every single week, it's a lot harder to, plan ahead and still get those things done. Instead, you're like, off, I'm off. Like, I don't know, like so much needs to be done, and it can be a lot more stressful. So this makes me feel like I know the minimum to keep the business progressing. And then I can
Mm.
just pile on those other things as I have time. So I kind of like rank my activities based on what's the most important. And then obviously week to week, like you got to do the commission, you got to ship the commission, but like it's nice to have that kind of marketing baseline.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that? Questions?
So
Yeah,
do you
Sarah.
block it? Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. We'll do Sarah
No,
then
go ahead.
Allie.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
So hold on one second. Oh, got it. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I guess I have a question about, so I think we're all kind of in the same boat where we like to be creative and we like to move around and do a whole bunch of different tasks, or maybe we don't, but it is what it is. But I'm having a hard time like figuring out how much painting is the right amount, but then to still get all of the other parts done. So like I go on these binges of painting where I'll paint like every day for a few weeks or something, but then I look around and I haven't posted anything on social media. I haven't written into my newsletter. I haven't done any of these things. And I know we always talk about like the most crucial part is like if we're not painting, we're not doing our job, right? Like that's the essence of what we're doing, or whatever creative
Right.
Yeah.
you are. And so I guess my question is like, do you have a ratio that you would recommend, or I just feel like there could be unlimited amounts of time I could spend on Instagram or learning Pinterest, different things, or contacting galleries or doing all sorts of other things, but then my mind kind of shifts into that place. It becomes difficult to then focus on the art.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my question is like, I'm sure we all struggle with this same thing. I don't even really know what my question is. I guess is there some magical ratio
That was my question.
Yeah.
that you can tell us so we can just lock in, Haley?
Yeah. So I'm going to say first initial thought is there's kind of two types of, well, this is like really basic. There's more than this, but like kind of two types of people I feel like and how they work with their art. And I feel like I'm in the bucket of when I paint, I need like a full day or at least like a half a day for painting and then like a full day or a half a day for business. I'm not good at like painting a little and then doing this and then doing that. And then I have some people that even that switch doesn't work for them. Like my friend Meg Indy, who I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, she'll like go on a full blown painting binge for like 2 months and then spend like the whole year like marketing it and talking about it. And if you actually go through and look through her social media, you can see these waves of like she's been doing the magnolia flowers for a really long time. And she kind of had like a series before that. And that just works for her. She's like, I'm super, super inspired. And then I like pause. And then I'm super, super inspired by like all the marketing aspects. And like, she still paints, but it's kind of like structured like that. So I think what I would say is if you feel really confident in your style, you know what you're doing, you're already in galleries, I think you could probably spend more of the time on the business tasks. I still want you to paint a lot because that's how you're going to make your money. Like I would say it'd be 50-50. But I think if you're newer, and I put myself in this category too. Like sometimes I'm like, if you're in a category and you're like, I don't know what to paint right now, or I don't feel like I've found my thing, or I'm still interested in a lot of different things, you need to be painting more because that's the only way you're going to find it. And when I say painting, drawing, whatever your medium is, because I feel like I did a 30-day creative challenge, and that's how I came up with my ideas for the reading girls, which were totally random. And that never would have happened if I hadn't carved out time to just like create for myself, not to sell. And I've talked about this a lot, so I don't want to be super repetitive here, but I think that's really important, but it's the hardest thing to do because it's not moving the needle like necessarily. Like it took me 30 days to come up with that. Like it was a lot of trial and error of just being out there and being creative. It took me 30 days on top of like 29 years. So but I think that is really important. And like the biggest artists, I guess, that I've seen that have taken off, it's never that they just come up with this style or they come up with this subject matter or color palette or technique out the get-go. Like I really recommend following your favorite artist and like scrolling all the beginning of their Instagram. Like you'll be like, oh wow, they also did, these types of commissions or whatever when they first started. And so I think you have to carve out that time. So I think you always should be spending at least half your time painting, but I think I don't want to say the newer you are, but the more more like you're in a phase where you're kind of like stuck or you don't really know what to focus on, the more you need to be painting. Because I also find the more I create, the less I actually have to spend time on marketing. Like I'll just give the example, like for the reading girls, it was so easy to market them because I was painting so much and just filming and taking pictures as I was painting that the actual marketing, it was like, I know what I'm marketing and I have so much content from actually doing it. I didn't like highly edit it. It was just kind of like, turn these 3 videos into like reels and you're good to go. And so they kind of go hand in hand in some ways too.
Yeah.
Does that help or at least get us started?
Yeah, I think your advice about like the more locked in you are to your style and the confident nature of your style, then you can push more to you know, like the 50-50 ratio, or like you need to figure out what it is that you're going to be doing first.
Yeah, and I think you need to think about it in phases, like, and it's not even like how far along you are in business. It's just like what phase in this period in time are you in? And it's, am I in the like, I need some time to kind of nail down what I want to create phase? You need to be painting more. Are you in the phase where I'm good? Like, this is what I want to paint. I know what I want to promote. Now I need to go get it in front of people, like either find the people or like introduce it to people I already have. You need to be spending more time on marketing. Or are you in the phase where like, I have an audience, I have the thing I like, and maybe I need to figure out how to broaden that even more, and I need to reach out to galleries or, you know, work with designers to be able to raise my prices. Like, these are kind of the different stages, I think, and like the time you spend on different things depends on like where you are in that phase of your business. And like, I feel like you switch between them. Like, there's different times when you feel like you're in one and then the other.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Desiree, do you have a question?
Yeah,
I was like, where is she?
Yeah, I may not be qualified to be on this call. I don't know, but
You definitely are.
I am brand new. Like I just last year I was like, I don't have any hobbies. I was a workaholic, and so I was like, I should try to get hobbies. So I started painting, anyways. Fell in love with it, and so now I don't know where to start. Like I have an Instagram page. I don't tell anybody about it. Like it's a secret. And then my friends are like, wait a second, what is this? I'm like, oh, it's like I don't want to share. You know, I get really embarrassed. Like it feels very vulnerable to put it out there to the world.
Yeah.
So at this point, I've gone to a couple art festivals this year, and the only ones remaining are going to, I'm in Oklahoma City this summer. So they're going to be like 100-degree weather. So I'm trying to figure out like, do I get an EIN and do Shopify? Do I start going to festivals, paying the booth rental fees, and then just sit out there for 2 days and the offline? Or do I contact galleries? Like, I don't really know which direction to go, but I've been painting and listening to your podcast, Haley, and it's so incredibly helpful to hear artists and like their struggles and like where they started and like where they're at now. But it's all I want to do, and I'm not working. So I'm like, you're not really qualified to just like quit your job, but I did. So I'm trying to figure out like where's my first step? Do I do all of the above? Do a website, continue social media, share my art, or do I just go to gal? I don't know like what direction to go just yet.
Yeah, I think I would say, and I'm sure other people might chime in on this too, because a lot of people are probably not that far from where you are now, or like can look back and imagine where they were when you were where you are now. That didn't come out right, but you know what I mean. But I would say I would start with getting comfortable telling people that you do this and really showcasing it on social media. That was something I was really uncomfortable with. Also, like, context on me, I didn't have an Instagram. Like, I grew up, I think Instagram came around when I was in high school, and I just like was anti phones and all of that stuff, which is ironic now. And so I didn't have an Instagram. And then like in college, I made my art Instagram and still felt weird promoting it. And then didn't even like, I think it was basically like last year at the end of the year, I was like, we're going to make my personal Instagram and my Instagram the same, and it's all going to make sense. And so it's not comfortable. Like, if that helps, it took me a really long time. But once I did it, all these people came out of the woodwork from like my previous life, and they're like, we love that you're doing this. How can we support you? How can we buy your work? This is so cool. Like, you've always loved art. We love seeing it. And so I think it's definitely more positive than not. But so I think that's like step one, is I would definitely get comfortable like sharing it. I think step two is I would create a website. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to hire someone, but just having basically a landing page to start growing your email list, which I'll circle back to. But more than that, like if you do want to work with galleries, you want to get into more shows or markets, like they're going to want to see just some kind of presence. I don't think you need a huge following to get into these places, but I just think showing that you're a professional with having a website and having an Instagram is great. And then you can expand from there and like make it an e-commerce site and make it, do more with it and like whatever that looks like. But I would say those are probably the starting points. And then I think, you can decide if there's a gallery you feel like is a good fit, you can always apply while you're doing these other things. But I think my main focus would be the Instagram and then website stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else with that? I mean, I know you have a lot of questions, or like there's a lot we could build off of that, but that's just my initial
It
gut.
feels scary. Like I had a friend of a friend message me on Instagram and say like, oh, I love this. And I had already done like two paintings last week, and I shared it on Instagram. And then I went and made like six more of different sizes. Like that's all I was like, oh my gosh, somebody liked something. And I'm like, okay. And I made like, so there's 8 of them now. And then I sent her all of them and I made that pricing and I felt very odd doing that. I was like,
Yeah.
that's too expensive. Like, what's affordable? You know, like I didn't want to say like I look at everyone else's pricing. I'm like, well, I'm not there yet. But I was like, got my receipt out from Jerry's Artorama, and I'm like, okay, how much was the canvas? How much was this? And
Right.
then she said, well, I'm moving and these are the colors I would want. So could you maybe create me something? And that just feels very intimidating. I would rather her just like find something I've already done and do that versus I feel like I would just not meet their expectations. Like I'm scared of doing a commission and someone saying, yeah, that's not really what I was looking for. Because I don't always know that people know what they're wanting. And I don't want just somebody to
Yeah.
buy it and just not hurt my feelings. But I don't know. So a lot of intimidation, but yeah, I will keep creating and put it out there. And Allie, thank you guys for your comments. I need to get an EIN and just, yeah, make a Shopify and then go sit in the heat
Yeah.
and
No,
do the
I love it.
festivals
And I
here.
think for the commission thing, just like really quickly, if this is something new to you, and commissions are hard, you could always like, I always think like I'm really honest with people, and you could say, and maybe I'm too like candid, but you could say, this is my first time doing a commission like this. I'm happy to offer you like a big discount because it's kind of my first endeavor into this. And you could kind of work through it that way. I'm not like a huge person on giving people a huge discount, but I think if it's your first one and this is your trial, I think that could be also like a good test for you, but also, you get the sale and then maybe you get some pictures of like your first commission and it could be a good learning experience. So that's a way you could think about it too. Is just like being open and honest about that and then saying like, with all that in mind, I'm happy to give you, kind of a fair discount because this isn't, I'm not, this isn't what I typically do.
Okay, thank you guys.
Yeah. Sally, do you have a question?
I do. Am I unmuted? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
hear you.
Okay, awesome. This kind of is a spinoff a little bit of a portion of what you were talking about a minute ago when the calendar or time blocking or whatever conversation. But my question was, because you mentioned about how you spend your time and your non-negotiables, and you had mentioned about, your podcast and your newsletter, blog, whatever. So I struggle with consistency on sending out newsletters. And I also want to do a blog or a Substack or whatever, but I'm like, my gosh, you can't even do a newsletter consistently. But the reason for that is, unlike you, like you're offering a service, and that makes so much sense to me about what your content is going to be when you are sending out your newsletters or you're having a podcast or whatever. That makes a lot of sense because you're, offering a service.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem thinking of content for my newsletter because I don't want everything I send out to be buy this, buy this, buy this. I mean, I don't want to be that person. I know that there's a lot of value, and I do a decent job, I guess, on my Instagram sometimes about like, well, this is who I am or whatever. So I guess my question is some tips or how to, as a creative, how do we come up with, and I don't want to be writing something just to fill a bucket, but how do we find topics that's relatable and shows kind of who we are as a person and as an artist, that also kind of pulls it into the ecosystem of collectors? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it is a struggle. Like, obviously, I'm writing educational content. That's a big bucket I can pull from. But I think what I do a lot on Substack, I think will be helpful for you guys. I mean, it can be email, it can be a blog, it can be whatever. But what I do that's a little bit more of a personal newsletter, I, one, have an ongoing draft list because I find that like randomly in the middle of the night, randomly driving my car, randomly doing different things. This could be a notes tab. I'm like, oh, this would be like really interesting to elaborate on. Or if you ever catch yourself like sharing in a story or talking on a reel and being like, wow, I really had to like spew that out in 1 minute. I wish I could go longer. Those types of things kind of can translate well into longer form content. And I think when it comes to emails in particular, obviously you at some point want to sell in there and talk about your work, but I think what actually sells more is people knowing who you are. And so I think it's just sharing your interests. And so if it's a monthly newsletter, let's say, I think that's a good cadence for you guys, for artists in general. I would say you can either format it like it's kind of a template, and it's like I always write. For you, I know you're big on like living joyfully. I don't think that's the exact phrasing, but joy and all of that. And I think you could almost have like, it could literally be like 3 sentences. It's like how to live joyfully this month, or like one thing I noticed, and you could just have something like that, an update on what's going on with your art. And maybe, it depends on your brand, but it could be just like little anecdotes. It doesn't have to be long. People don't have that much time. So honestly, shorter is better.
Yeah.
And I think like it even could be, for others that I don't know as much about, like it could be, one paragraph, like note from the artist, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm thinking about. Summer's crazy. I have kids, here's how I'm, beating the summer heat with my kids. And it's like an activity, a recipe, and something else. Like there's a lot of ways to go about this, but I think it's figuring out what are you uniquely interested in. And people just want to feel like they know you. And I think when we hear that, we think we need to be like this really polished version of ourselves and like a creator and like a content like person. It's like, no, you can just be yourself. So I think a good starting point is figuring out what are some topics you would want to cover. So the way I've heard it before is like, if your marketing strategy, like I've heard it on Instagram, but we'll say your email is like a morning show, what are your different segments? Like if you were a morning show, like what are your different segments that still fit the broader kind of topic? And I find that really helpful because then you can skew a little bit just away from selling and buy my art, buy my art, buy my art. And you can also fold in like, my art's really colorful because I'm a really colorful person, and here's how to like live colorfully. I don't know.
You do that.
Yeah, you can like put a twist on it. And like, I think, I mean, I know you, personally, but I think like what you did with your little traveling backpack and like all the places it went, like that could turn off into like a whole little story. Like, here's the 3 places I went this month and why I went. Like, we don't really have to overthink it. And I also think the more you do it, it becomes easier and easier. And you'll start to have that drafts tab of like, I think this would be interesting for my audience. I think this would be interesting. And it's just, you kind of have to get in the habit again by just doing it.
Right. And it's almost like when you train yourself to look for evidence of fill in the blank, you end up seeing it everywhere, I guess.
Yeah.
And so like what you're saying, like by having the drafts tab, by having that, and it's, it's already set in your mind to be on the lookout for things. So like, oh yeah, let me just put that that's a great tangible thing I can do. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad I could help. Macy, do you have a question?
A little bit piggybacking off of that. I think I'm off mute. Mine's just slow. Hey, Valerie, I was going to say that when I kind of work backwards, newsletter is a big piece of content that you can pull 8, 10, 12 social media ideas from. So like doing the work on a newsletter gives you so much content and stuff too to write about, whether it's on social media or blog or on your website, but you've got those big paragraphs that you can turn into bullet lists or, a reel with all the bullet lists. So like that one piece seems like a lot of work and it's daunting for me, but I just started saving newsletters that made me open it and were easy to read. And I'm like, I can copy this framework on my own.
Yeah, that's
a great,
huge.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also think from a marketing standpoint, not being afraid to be really repetitive, like pull things from your newsletter to your Instagram, to your TikTok, to your Pinterest, whatever. That's actually what big brands do. Like I know you hear like, oh, it takes us so many times to see it, but like literally that can be seeing the same photo multiple times. Like I will write a newsletter and then I will use the exact photos for my Instagram. I will use exact quotes on my Instagram. I will make a reel about what it is about. And that doesn't take very long, but goes a really long way. And all of the sudden, from an outside perspective, people are like, oh, she's on brand. Like she's doing one thing. She's not trying to come up with something completely new every day. And it actually makes you look like you have a marketing team that's helping you do this. And it's easier.
I had a question also. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Emily. Before we change topics, then.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, AC, you can go.
Okay. So this kind of two questions that fold into one. So I am a calligrapher and event artist, but kind of dipping my toes in the painting world now. And so I was looking for like 7-day challenge, 30-day challenge, like making myself do something every day to kind of learn new techniques and stuff. So I was looking for any recommendations of like, do you take some photos for inspiration and paint? Which also led me to what do you do with all of the work that maybe you don't even like and it's just stacking up in the corner, or like large canvases if I don't like what it looks like, because when I started engraving, like you're doing it on old wine bottles you're going to throw away anyway, but it
Yeah.
feels wasteful. Like what do you do with a whole practice collection that's really not?
Yeah, I think you have to first figure out, is it like totally not viable? And in that
Yes,
case, like we don't need to
it
do
is
anything with
that.
it. I'm going to speak to like if it's medium, you're like, oh, this isn't totally me, but like maybe we can do something with it. I actually did, this was kind of fun. Earlier this year, I had a bunch of like sketches that I just was going to like throw away, to be honest. And I was like, I think I charged like $25 a person. And I was like, Venmo me $25, you get a random bundle of them. And it was kind of fun because people could like not know what they were going to get. And it's like $25. And it basically just covered my like shipping, but it was just like a fun kind of marketing social media type thing. And it also got this stuff at my house, which my husband was really happy about. So I think that's something that can just be fun. I think if it's things that are like you really don't want, just paint over it. I also think there's like a story in that. I love when artists are like, this is my art that didn't work out, and like I'm painting over it. But not everything has to be for social media and marketing. I think painting over it and then also having a budget. Like I personally used to struggle with it, and I still like kind of do, but have a budget that allows me to spend a little bit on materials that aren't just to sell. Like you don't want to have your profit margin be so tight that like every single canvas I buy, I have to sell it to like make up that. It's like let's charge enough that like if we have 3 canvases that aren't great, like we have enough buffer room that like that's okay. That's obviously harder in the beginning. So it's like great, do your practice work on paper or use acrylics versus oils. Like that doesn't always work, but there's things you can do to like cut corners on some of that to save money. But I think kind of having a little bit of money set aside that's just for like experimentation and time, money and time, I think is really important. Does that like answer your full question? Like I went on a down a rabbit hole.
No, it did. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to just paint over it, but it's more so like less of the experimenting and more of when I've done it and I have a stack of things that I don't like taking up room. Like it feels wasteful kind of, but yeah, painting over it definitely makes sense, obviously, because these items I'm kind of working on are a larger scale than calligraphy work, that's like this big.
Yeah.
No,
I
that helps.
also
Thank
think
you.
sometimes it's okay to get rid of stuff. I feel like it really weighs on me when I have a bunch of work I don't like in my studio. So I recommend like if you're getting to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much stuff. Like I don't know. I feel like I have this inner spiral of like I'm not a good artist, like all this stuff. And so it's like sometimes I just like take it to the trash. And like I mean if I can't paint over it or something, but that that can help with like clearing those like negative thoughts too. And you might not have those, but I do.
No, I do. And if anyone has a good like 7-day challenge or 30-day this and you want to share it in the chat, I'm just looking for something that gives me a little accountability, but also ideas like what
Yeah.
to paint, how to start something like that.
Yeah, people definitely share those. Kelsey, do you have a question?
Yes, I was interested in what you were sharing about the commission piece. And you mentioned like offering a discount. This is my first commission. I also was wondering if it's okay to maybe charge more versus the collection that you already have made of like now I'm adding more time doing something I don't personally want, but I know this is a sale and so I need to do it for them. Or if it's a good fit, like it can continue to be a collector. But would it be appropriate to charge and say, okay, well, we're having your 30-minute Zoom consultation. That's time and a whole nother side of my brain. So is it okay to have the prices where it's a little bit different, a little bit more like this is a custom white experience for you? And then, yeah, I wanted to just check in about that because I loved that question earlier.
Yeah, I think definitely different situation. If you're doing commissions, definitely charge more. So again, another example, I feel like I'm talking about myself, but the Reading Girls, I launched them. I had a lot of people reaching out for commissions just because people were like, oh, I want her to be a redhead and I want her to be reading this book and I want these colors. And it was just like a natural commission type work. So I opened commissions and I raised my prices like 10 to 20%, kind of like depending on size, just to round numbers. And one, nobody said anything. I don't think, like most cases you can do it. And I don't think we're gonna be like, why is this, a little bit more? But if they do, I think you can explain that. You're like, look, I'm color matching, I'm working with you. I'm gonna consult with you with these different points. I think a really strong strategy is to have a contract that you send them. So the way I typically do it, which I didn't do a contract this time, but don't tell people. The way I typically do it is 50% deposit up front. And once they pay and sign the contract, I get started and I tell them the timeline and all that. And what I think the contract is really helpful for is honestly less if anything blows up. Like more likely it just gives you both an outline of like how this is going to go. And so what I think it's really helpful for is explaining like you get one edit or you get two edits, and step one you pay and then I start and then I check in with the sketch or I check in with the final product. Like it just lays that out, and lays out like how you ship it, when you ship it, how that gets charged. It can be super basic. I think I have a contract example. I know I have one in the club, but if anyone has questions about it, I think I maybe have it on my website. I don't know. We'll circle back on that where it is, but I have an example. But I think that's really important. And then I think you definitely should charge more. I just don't, basically you should charge more for all of that back and forth. And it's custom. I mean, I think it's a lot easier for me to paint 10 things I want to paint and people just buy them than somebody say, well, I want this exact thing in this exact way by this exact date. And so you should charge for that, a little bit of a premium for that. I think like depending on your price point, like 10 to 20% more is usually what I say. So, I mean, if it's really small or big, you tweak that as you need to, but that's generally where I go. Yeah. Other like questions relating to that, Kelsey?
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Lane, do you have a question?
Oh, it's Janice. I'm sorry. It's underneath my son's email.
Oh, I was like, sorry, Janice.
It's okay. Totally fine.
Oh, Janice Willis. Yes, I also know you.
Okay. So I hate to change subject because you were talking about commissions and that was really great information also. But I was wondering about the email newsletters. So I feel like I've kind of checked the boxes as far as I've come up with email like protocols, like designs. I've come up with newsletter designs. I seem to have way more ideas for newsletter than I actually have email subscribers. Okay. So the idea generation isn't a hard thing for me because I feel like I could make a business on just coming up with ideas. I like to do that. But when it comes to actually getting subscribers, I really only have a handful, and I've put the link on my website, subscribe to be the first to find out about new collections, and even offered a percentage off their first purchase, but it still doesn't really reel in any. And so then I thought, I see other artists offering maybe some freebies, but I can't just mail out free art to people just for signing up on my email list. That's going to get too costly. Yeah. I have started, you were talking about your excess work. I have started when I have some excess work or smaller pieces, or I used to make fine art bookmarks. I've started giving those to collectors when they purchase a piece of art as just a thank you gift. So I thought, well, I can give those to email subscribers, but there again, I'm not just going to start paying for postage to send things out. So other than coming up with like a digital art piece that they could download when they sign up for, which I hate doing that too, because that's your art you're giving someone rights to, but I could choose one and do that. But even like I did art shows, and the only really tag that I could get people in the booth to sign up for email was I did a little giveaway for a small painting. And so they would give me their email address for that. But like I even had a couple of pieces in different galleries, and the gallery owners don't give me collectors' emails. I even sold some art in a gallery and they wouldn't give me the collector's email. They wanted me to communicate just with them. And that's probably their policy. That's okay. But it puts me in a situation where, okay, I've got a pretty email template and I have a schedule and I'm ready to go, but who am I sending it to? So, so do you have any ideas or advice for generating, more email subscribers?
Yeah, I have a lot. So I'm like, don't forget these ideas, Haley.
Okay.
First, I would say everything you have is great. Like, I love that you have it on your website. Like, don't stop doing any of that. I would say where I get most of my subscribers is truly from talking about my email. So like right before it goes out, right after it goes out, and then specifically like around art launches, commissions being open, those things. I'm like, commissions are open. There's only 10 of them and emails get first. Like it just, and that sounds annoying, but like I did it leading up to my collection drop every single day, basically on social media. And you'd get like 2 a day, and then you get 3 a day. And then I think I ended up with like 35 people on the early interest list for the reading girls. That's like a separate list for my full email list. And that's like not huge, but when you only have 17 in the collection, I'm like, I'll take 35 people interested. But I think that trickle effect works really well. And we can build on this, but I'm going to share all my ideas before I forget them. And then 2 things I know that have worked really well for people are, one, if you do print, so this might not be you, but I'll just speak to the general audience. She does a giveaway for she does a giveaway from her full email list. 1 person a month gets a print. So it incentivizes people to join and stay on the list. That's worked really well for her. I know another artist who does a quiz, and it's what art is best in your home or like something like that. I can't remember. I'm watching it. It's Dalee Putnam. Just take it yourself. But she's had a lot of success with that. And I think building off that idea in particular, I would say put yourself in your buyer's shoes. And I have to do this a lot, and it like takes some critical thinking. But I feel like I see so many people doing like freebies and like things like that, but it's like stuff I wouldn't actually want. So I'm like, why would my customer want it? Like, for example, like, I'm no shade if you've done this, because odds are I've done it at some point, but like a phone background, for example. I have had artists work as a phone background before, but like I'm rare. I would say most of your clients probably want like their kids as their background or like their dog, not your art, not because they don't like it, but they probably want your art for their home. And so I think sometimes you have to think about what is useful to them. So that either could be something like a print giveaway, like something physical that if they want a print of yours, odds are they'll also want your work. So it's attracting the right customer. Or it could be something educational that helps you to sell more work. So like a framing guide, a how to style a bookshelf, a how to find the right size for different, areas in your home, like guides like that make people actually also more likely to purchase from you. Like let's say you're doing a collection of small pieces, a how to style your bookshelf is great, because then I'm like, oh, well, I can buy this 4x4 piece and now I know how it's going to fit into my bookshelf. So I think if you're going to go the educational route, like you get this thing for that, do something that actually also helps them purchase. I also love a framing guide. Like I don't do this as a freebie, but all the time I'm like, here are my top 5 like Amazon frames. So that helps people buy work on paper that's unframed, and you can include an affiliate link or something if you want to or not. But like little things like that actually are educational, get them on your list, like get the right people on your list, but then also help them purchase is huge. Like because you don't need that many people, you just need the right people, and then giving them the tools to actually go through with purchasing too.
Mm-hmm. That all makes sense. Yeah, I get all that. And then do you think that's just since you also kind of run it, you also run it on the gallery side? Is that pretty standard for like a gallery even to not share emails of collectors and patrons, especially if they buy your art?
Yeah, so I don't do that, but I'm also like not a good. I'm like loosey-goosey with probably a lot of things. But the reason, so I don't know. But I would say the reason
I thought maybe it's standard.
I would think it's probably more common than not, because they want to sell your work. They don't want customers, like they want their cut. They need their cut. That's how their business works. And if they're finding these customers to show your work, and then they just give you their email, and then you start, and I'm not saying like this is a wrong, but I'm thinking like their mentality, then all of a sudden they do all this hard work to get the customer, and then they just pass them on to you, and you don't, they lose their part of the business. So from a business standpoint, I see why they're doing it. And so I generally think if you're an artist and you're working with galleries, it's not going to be beneficial from like a email list building standpoint, but it'll be great for your social media. It'll be great for sales, great for credibility. So there's other benefits to it.
True. And I totally, from a business standpoint, I understand their reasoning, if that's their reasoning, of course. No,
Yeah,
no
and
one
I
wants
think,
to undercut anyone. So
yeah, it might be common. But I mean, again, it probably varies a little bit gallery to gallery. So
Okay.
yeah,
Thanks for those tips. Yeah.
of course. Other questions or thoughts kind of building on any of this or something new? I know people have more
I
questions.
wanted to ask you, I love talking about the email list, and I've had an email list for almost 5 years, but thinking about Substack versus an email list, would you recommend Substack instead of an email list, or is it necessary to have both? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll share first how I use both, and then I'll kind of talk about the pros and cons. So obviously I'm in a little bit of a unique situation because I do a lot of things, but I basically use my email list, which is through Klaviyo or Klaviyo. I never know how to say that. It's connected to my Shopify. It's connected, it has all these like flows and automations, and like a lot of them are getting messed up recently. So like if you guys got a weird email from me, sorry. But theoretically, that's the one that's like if you buy from Shopify, then you get a thank you, like thank you for purchasing. Or if you signed up for this, you would get like a great, here's your Zoom code, like things like that. So I use it more for like e-commerce, follow-up emails, and then like blasts, like the Scouted Studio. If you ever get an email and it's like, this is their new collection, like all of that is just through Klaviyo. I use my Substack as more of like a personal blog that just gets blasted out to people. That's how I use it because of the situation I'm in. I think for you guys as artists, you need to think about, are you more interested in the features? And you can have both, but the Substack's free. But are you more interested in the features of, the back end automations, the flows, the all of that some of your websites might do as well? Or like you want it more e-commerce specific, or are you more interested in kind of like blog style? Like you want to write more, you want to share more insights, you want to, share more long form written content, and you don't care. Because you can still like link stuff. It's just not gonna, it's more like a blog that also goes out as an email. So the Substack benefit is it's basically an email tied to kind of like a social media type thing. It's like its own little like platform versus, a Klaviyo, a MailChimp, a Flowdesk that can actually integrate with your website. So you can have both. I don't think most of you need to, or you can have one or the other. I think it's more like what type of content do you want to write? Substack can be great for growth. Like I feel like 20% of my subscribership on that platform has come directly from the platform. So there's that benefit as well. I'm happy to dig into this more, but that's kind of my like initial thoughts on both.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. Does anyone else have questions on like email versus Substack stuff?
Allie had a question on the thread about a contract form.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you said it right after. You were like, maybe it's on my website somewhere. So I mean, while we're sort of in and out of commissions, I've had
Yes.
people say, I'm interested in commissions. Let's talk about commissions. And then I'll send them my form because I recently made it and I was like just tired of the back and forth on the email. And I felt like I was spending so much time sitting down writing this email. So I filled that out. And I guess my question maybe is more like, how do you just wrap it up? How do you just seal the deal? Like, so you've reached out, I reached back out, you filled out my form. And then, or maybe you haven't filled out my form. So like this week, I feel like I've reached out to like 5 or 6 different people who have said, I'm interested in a commission. I'll send them my form, and then it just drops. So like, I need to figure out what to move forward with. So how do you decide like when to just like cut the line? Like we're done here.
Yeah. Well, I love following up a few times just because I think art isn't always other people's priorities as much as it is ours. Like they're probably, like
Yes.
it's not a need, it's a want.
Right.
So I
Right.
think being a little like, last time we talked, it was a Friday afternoon. Maybe next Wednesday, I follow up and just say, hey, are you still interested? And I kind of like to hit people different ways. So if we initially talked on Instagram and then we moved, I always try to move people to email. But, maybe I'll follow up on their email. And then if they don't respond there, maybe I'll like go in and be like, hey, just like, no worries if you're not interested anymore, but just want to check in. If those conversations feel awkward, I recommend like writing what you want to say in ChatGPT and then being like, put this in a nice but pushy tone.
Yes. Yes.
That can be helpful.
Yes.
It kind of like distances you from it a little bit. But I do recommend following up, maybe twice. And then if they're not going to fill out their form or they're not even responding, cut the cord. I've had people reach out like 6 months later and they're like, actually, I still want that. I'm like, oh, okay. But I recommend that. And then in terms of like how to stay on top of everything, you didn't like fully ask this, but it might be helpful.
Come on.
I just did my commission launch. And so what I did was I sent out a Google form, which was highly recommend. I don't know why I just came up with this idea. It was like fill in your name, your email, your address if you want to, because I can give you a shipping quote. And then they could just check off the size and corresponding price. And, there was like a note section where I can also send this to all of you guys. You could like look at the thing if you wanted, but they could fill in everything they wanted. And then what I did was I set up, so that goes into a Google form, like a little spreadsheet thing. Then I set up a Zap. If you guys have ever used Zapier, I hadn't, but it's really easy. And I just said, every time somebody fills out this form, send me an email. And I just get an email that says new commission request. So I just know to check it. Otherwise I'd forget. And then I have a newer commission request. I have a draft email that I literally just sub in like their name, what they want, the size. And I say like, great, I hear, you could probably automate this, but I still kind of write it. I see this is what you want. If you're good to move forward, I will send you an invoice for the 50% deposit right now. As soon as it's paid, I'll get started. Here's my timeline. So it's very automated. So it's like they fill out the form. I send them that first email. As soon as they get back to me and they say yes, I send them the invoice and then we're like good to go. It's sped it up, but it's also nice because like if they don't fill out the form, you follow up with them then. If they don't say yes to the invoice deposit, you follow up with them then, but it like keeps them moving through faster. And like, I feel like I have a really streamlined system and I got everyone to like pay their deposit in like 2 days, which is way different than what it used to be.
Yes. Well, I think that part of my issue might be that my Google form is probably too long or too detailed. Like mine was just a really wide open. And I think I gave too many like open-ended questions.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the issue. People
I'm gonna try to pull mine up right now just so I can actually read what mine is because it's super simple.
Yes.
I also put like it's summer commission request form. And it says spots are open, they're first come, first serve. Here's how it works. And this is like before you take the form and it says fill out the form below. I'll reach out with a custom price, timeline, 50% deposit invoice. Once the deposit is paid, your spot's locked in and we begin. Like that's it. It's just step 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Then I say name, email address, optional shipping address, and I say for most pieces shipping will range from $7 to $25 unless they're oversized. And I like list what that is.
Right.
Then I say, here are your size options. So it's, it'll be like the size and then in parentheses, the price. And I don't list a ton of sizes, which we can circle back to that. And then I just have an other section. So it's like, there's not like 1,000 options. It's like, here's 5 options. Then if you want something else, you can just type it in. And then I say, do you have a specific deadline? And then I'll do my best to accommodate. And then I said, please share any details for the piece, color preferences, hair color, et cetera, because they're people. And I said, we'll discuss this more after the form's been received, but the more information you can provide now, the easier the process will be. And that's it. So it's super short, but it kind of gives them what they need. And it's a lot of like multiple choice, not open-ended questions. And I think that allows people to just click, 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 click.
I think so. Well, and I wanted to ask you too, I've noticed that like Katie Brown does this and she'll open commissions and she's like, I'm doing my flowers. Tell me your colors. This is what I'm offering. And the same thing with your reading girls. This is what I'm offering. Shoot me your colors or, tiny tweaks. I think where I've gotten a little bit underwater maybe with people is just like my window is too big. I don't do people and I don't do pets. Although I like how you did yours behind the book. I like that.
Thinking smart.
But I will say, I just don't know if I have enough confidence yet in like the budget wise. Like this is not vacation money for our family. This is income. I need for it to be income. So part of me is like, I want to open commissions to allow more people to book me. But at the same time, I feel like I've almost shot myself in the foot because people don't know what they want. And it's like I could do a landscape for a certain price, but if they want something, a little bit more abstract or a little bit different, it's going to take a different time or a different price. Or do you just say this is my price and I'm just going to make it work? Does that make
Well,
sense?
what
That
I
was a lot
did
of questions.
was, yeah, I think what you could do that's slightly different is I put the prices next to it because they're all kind of the same. So I could, but I think you could not put the prices next to the size, but kind of put like a range and say,
Yeah.
based on what you're interested in, I will send you a quote. And so in that next email, which I still
Yes.
did, because in the next email I said, here's the full price because it included shipping. It like
Yes.
if they wanted anything specific, I was like, that might cost a little bit extra. Like I was doing embroidery and some, I was like, that's a little bit of an upcharge. And so
Right.
I would send people the final quote. I think you could do something like that. You also
Yes.
could you can include photos in Google Forms, and so you could almost say like, here are 3 options. I can do a landscape in this style. I can do a
Yes.
whatever like this, whatever like this. And you can kind of click. And then in that follow-up email, you can say, now screenshot things from my website and Instagram that you like, and we'll pull
Yeah.
from there. That's what I
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
Because
I
a
like
lot of
that
people
idea.
they'd write in there like, I like blues and greens. And I'm like, that's a really wide range. I need you to screenshot
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
blues and greens you
Yes.
like.
Yes. Okay. That's super helpful.
Yeah. And I
Thanks.
think for anyone, the more you can narrow down your commissions. I was talking to a friend who does this, and she like only takes above a certain size now. I talked to another artist who truly like only does one specific style of landscape. Obviously,
Yes.
some of these things come later, but I do think the more you can narrow it down, like even for these reading girls, I tried, like I didn't do anything below 8x8, which is still small, and I probably should have started higher, but I was like, I don't want to be doing like 1,000 5x5 paintings. Like it's not
No.
totally worth my time for what I could
No.
charge
No.
versus like a 12x12. I think I charge like, I don't know, $200 or something. I can't remember, 250. I don't know. But I'm like worth it. It's like a big enough size that if I'm doing it custom for you, I feel
Yeah.
like it's like worth the exchange. And so that's something to think about too, is not offering commissions on things that don't have a great return on your
Yeah.
investment. Like somebody asked me to do a
Right.
pet portrait one time and it was like this big. So I can only charge so much. I don't do pets. So it took me like 12 years and it still looked bad.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's thinking through things like that too. Like I don't do as many house commissions anymore. And I'll still do them here and there, but like what I can charge for how detailed they are, it's just hard to make it worth my time
Right.
with all the other stuff I have going on. So it's just kind of like understanding that more for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions? We have a few more minutes.
I have a quick question, and anyway, thanks for doing this. I hate getting on social media. I'm a teacher too, so I have like a full-time job and then trying to do this. I have not found my way, like how to present things. And I have a bunch of kids and they're like, Mom, why are you doing that? And like, I don't know, because anyway, they're great, but so if you're like me in this season of life where you have younger people who are always peaking your social media presence, how do you find your way, kind of like what fits, feels authentic? Because I'm really big into, it needs to feel authentic and not salesy, but then also can sell things too. So I don't know if you have clients you've worked with to help them navigate to the awkwardness of feeling like, hey mom, why did you make that real? Like, oh my word. You're not in that season, but you might be someday. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I still have like my husband sometimes be like, why is there like a tripod in the kitchen? I'm like, don't worry about it, even though like he knows what I do. So it's awkward, but I understand where you're coming from. I think what I would say first for non like face stuff, I think it's really helpful, and this isn't like crazy advice, but it's really helpful for me, is I created a folder on my Instagram, and this requires a little bit of like doom scrolling for like a day or like every once in a while. But I created a folder and it's like future content ideas or content ideas. And I just scroll and I wait for like what actually catches my eye. Like, what do I actually stop and spend more than like 1 second on? And I try to recreate it in my own way, and not right then and there. I just like save it in a folder until I have time. But that's been really helpful for both like carousel posts, reels. I also am on TikTok, like kind of. And like sometimes there's like random trends that are going viral and I'll just save it because I'm like, oh, I could totally put my own like art spin on this. I find it really helpful to just actually like spend a little bit of time on the apps. I don't all the time, but it's like if you can do that, like when you're on there, just like have enough awareness to like save things as it catches your eye. I think that's a really good starting point to get better and better content ideas that are actually going to engage your audience. And then I think stories for me feel like a really safe place to start. And I would say start with your voice, not necessarily your face, because I think that's really difficult and like cringe and like hard to do still for me. But I feel like it's really easy to film, like if you filmed yourself doing something like packaging a painting or doing something, and then just whether you're talking while you're doing it or you're doing voiceover later, I just think it starts to get people feeling like they know you. Like whether I just think like the voice, your voice goes a long way. I mean, I'm not saying you guys should have a podcast by any means, but like I have a podcast and I feel like people tell me all the time, they're like, just like hearing your voice every week makes me feel like I know you. And I think that's really important with your customers. So I'd say start with that. And as you get more comfortable, like you can show little bits of yourself, but I don't think it has to be like a full blown, full body, face to the camera, reel or post. It can be like little posts that are photos of you every now and then, or like a cover photo that's like a nice photo every now and then. But I think stories are really easy. Like it's 24 hours. It's like sometimes I do something, I'm like, wow, that was really cringe, but it's gonna be gone in 3 hours. So like who even cares? It's a good kind of entry point, I feel like.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other thoughts, questions on any of this?
Emily had a chat, or on the chat, she had a question for you, but she's at work.
Oh, let me see. Okay. How do you develop a daily routine that helps you? I'm just reading it out loud for everybody. That helps you be productive while also working full time. I bounce around between making art, marketing, social media, admin, creating content, etc. And now never really seem to make much progress in anything. I want to start building a consistent income through my creative work. Great question. A lot of artists I work with also have full-time jobs, part-time jobs. Like I worked a lot of jobs as I was starting my stuff, so I can totally relate to this. I think starting out with a lot of the stuff we talked about, what is your main focus based on what are your non-negotiables right now? So if you only have so much time, let's say you have, just for easy math, 1 hour a week after work. So that's 5 hours a week. I would say you're going to want to spend, depending again on where you are in your career, maybe you want to spend 3 of those 5 days like just painting, just creating work. But let's like work smarter, not harder. And let's film everything we're doing. So all of a sudden then I can have like real content. Like sometimes it's worth investing in the $10 tripod from Amazon. That's what I have. And I just have gotten in the habit of like running out of phone storage and having a ton of videos that aren't even that good. So work smarter, not harder. And then if you want to build, let's think about like that kind of covers social media. What are we doing for our email list? Like maybe you spend 1 day a week on 3 days a week on art, 1 day a week on, let's just focus on like, how am I going to get more eyeballs? How am I going to get new people? So like, how can I get new people to my email list? Maybe that's Pinterest. Maybe that's focusing a little bit more on scheduling out your Instagram. That's what I do. I schedule my whole Instagram out on Sunday. And then, maybe we do all the admin tasks on one day because those are just going to come up. Like you check all your emails. I know a couple artists that have an email auto like response that's I only check emails on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll get back to you, but I'm in the studio right now. And I completely respect that and wish I could do it. So that's something you could think about too. People don't have to know what you're doing. I also recommend, I'm not saying you haven't done this, but there's a lot of artists who have other jobs that have been on the podcast. And I always think those stories are really interesting, how they balance it because everybody's different. But I would say start with your non-negotiables. Dedicate the majority of your time to actually the creation process, and then just try to work smarter, not harder within that creation process. Yeah, that's my initial advice. I'm sure I could build on that more, but it's kind of what I'm initially thinking. And I know you're at work, so I'll let that sink in. But I think a lot of us have similar questions, but yeah, I hope this was helpful. It was fun. Cool.
Thank you so
Anything else?
much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right.
Thanks.
Well, it's always helpful to kind of talk through with more people. So this is fun.
Thank you so much, Haley.
Haley.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was so good to see all of you. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.